The story begins with Crest, the protagonist, having a dream in which he is granted a future skill. Called Gacha. He tells this dream to his father, a high-ranking noble in the royal capital, Rakind. Crest is his father's fifth son. And in this country, skills are given during the appraisal ceremony when a person turns 15. After sharing his dream, Crest feels relieved because he believes he will soon obtain the skill. This is also the first time he sees his father happy for him. When he was born, his mother died shortly after, causing Crest to be seen as a bad omen. A born sinner who is hated and isolated by his family. The only person who keeps him from being abandoned is Ellis, the daughter of Duke de Maine. She greets him and says that it is truly an important day that she should not miss. Crest wasn't really happy to see Ellis here, so he asked how she came when he heard that her health was not good. Hearing what he said, Ellis replied that if coming here would bother him, and Crest didn't have the courage to anger her. Ellis is the only reason he barely survived until today, since the political engagement between Ellis and Crest saved him from being abandoned by his family. Ellis is a beautiful, polite girl on the outside, but is actually a cruel person. Crest was abused since childhood not only by his father and brothers, but also by Ellis herself. She constantly tormented him, making him feel that even if he had the skill, nothing would change. Ellis even hinted that using his skill might make the bullying worse. Despite his fear, Crest decided that he could not hide forever. He bravely thanked Ellis and expressed that he wanted his skill to be useful to her. This made Ellis flustered and blush as she left, leaving Crest surprised that she did not get angry like usual. As usual, a servant came to inform Crest that it was time to attend the appraisal ceremony. Although Ellis truly has feelings for Crest, he just hopes that his bad days will end after this ceremony. Crest puts all his hopes on his gacha skill to start a new life. At the church, Crest puts his hand on the ritual device. It glows, and as expected, the gacha skill appeared on the screen. It was rumored that gacha owners could obtain countless skills. Crest's acquisition of this skill surprised everyone. His father asked him to activate the skill in front of everyone, and Crest did. When he activated it, a window appeared in front of him, like a game wheel to receive random skills. Crest was skeptical about how it would work. So with positive hopes, Crest touched the gacha spin button. But nothing happened. The crowd was confused as they only saw Crest waving his hand in the air without any effect. At this point, Crest realized that gacha skills required points to spin, but he currently had none. The shock caused Crest to be ridiculed by his brothers and accused of fraud. When he tried to explain, they just told him to spin the gacha right away. Crest had to confess that he needed points to use his skills, but didn't know how to collect them. His brothers laughed at him and told him to quickly earn points if he didn't want to be humiliated. Crest was desperate, unable to find a way out of this situation, and in his impasse, his heart felt like it was being squeezed, and he could only choke in silence. Crest's father, Aberal, his voice rang out, calling him a disgrace to the family. He also scolded whether Crest would continue to shame the Barhurst family after killing his mother, something Crest had never done. Ellis, standing in the crowd, smiled as he heard Aberal mercilessly insult Crest. Crest's heart ached at being treated unfairly. At that moment, Aberal announced that Crest would be banished from the family. The next morning, Crest was taken away on a carriage to exile. He couldn't believe this was happening to him. A feeling of despair overwhelmed him. His brothers taunted him all the way, saying that if he had listened to them, he could have stayed home a little longer. When he arrived at his place of exile, Crest found himself about to be sent down to the lower world through a magic circle. Panicking, he begged for a sword, because if he had to face the monsters without weapons, he would only die in vain. However, the priests refused, because they were ordered to treat Crest as a sinner. Crest then reminded them that the purpose of sending sinners to the lower world was to destroy demons. He pledged to fight and make the surface world safer. Crest's request moved the priests, who finally agreed to give him a bronze sword. Without hesitation, they sent Crest to the lower world, which was full of monsters. After Crest left, his brothers happily celebrated because they would no longer have to see his pitiful face. Coming to the lower world, Crest realized that this place was very similar to the surface world, except for the dark and gloomy atmosphere. He began to scout the area, trying to mentally prepare himself for any danger. He remembered that a magic circle from earlier was used to randomly send criminals to the underworld, and now he wondered what he should do next. Suddenly, from the bushes, a black wolf charged at a terrifying speed. Crest barely dodged, and realized that it was a black wolf. Not wanting to confront it too early, and fortunately his research on monsters, according to which these dark wolves were actually more dangerous than normal wolves. But Crest understood that there was no way back. He recalled the lessons about monsters at the academy and knew that he had to fight. Holding his bronze sword tightly, Crest prepared for his first encounter. Experience fighting monsters on the ground gave Crest some confidence, although he knew that monsters in the lower world were much stronger. The black wolf began to charge with sharp claws. To gain an advantage, Crest quickly threw dust into its eyes, causing the wolf to lose its direction for a moment. Seizing the opportunity, Crest slashed the wolf's face with his sword. However, it did not flinch and continued to attack. When the wolf was only a few centimeters away from him, the fighting instincts kicked in. Crest quickly raised his sword and stabbed straight into the wolf's skull. The wolf screamed in terror before collapsing, dying on the spot. Crest breathed a sigh of relief after overcoming the first attack. He realized that this bronze sword was truly precious and worthy of his initial request. Crest remembered that he needed to drain the wolf's blood to use as food. He knew exactly which species could be eaten and quickly got to work. After defeating the wolf, a notification popped up saying that he had received 100 points. Crest opened the gacha skill window and saw that the points were added to his account. At this point, he understood that he could earn points by defeating monsters. This also meant that gacha skills were useless on the surface, where there were no monsters to hunt. Unlike the surface world, now in the lower world, Crest realized that he could use gacha skills. Even so, he still hoped to have at least basic equipment to hunt monsters. Lying on the ground, Crest recalls the days of torture. He tells himself, perhaps it was for the best that things happened this way, though it was too late. After seeing the true faces of the evil people around him, Crest realizes that the lower world is more pleasant than living with them. For the first time in his life, he feels happy. Determined to master his skills, Crest prepares to hunt down as many monsters as possible to adapt to his new life. Meanwhile, at Ellis's house, she lies on her bed, hugging her pillow with Crest's image on it, because she misses him. Ellis recalls the time she met Crest after he was sentenced to exile. At that time, she mocked him as a fool for daring to fake the skills of a god. While Crest's eyes were filled with only deadness, Crest calls Ellis's name, and she asks if he has anything to say to her. Crest quips that she must be glad that her engagement with an idiot like him has broken off. Ellis replied that he shouldn't say that, especially to someone who tried to save him. Hearing this, Crest hoped again. Ellis said that from now on he was her dog, unable to leave at will. When Crest asked how to get help, Ellis held out her paw and asked him to lick her paw to swear eternal loyalty. If he did, she promised to marry him and save him from this place. Ellis even said that she would destroy her clan for Crest if he accepted. Crest approached her paw, but instead of obeying, he pushed her paw away. Fed up with Ellis's contemptuous attitude, Crest told her that she was crazy to think of him as her slave. Ellis angrily asked if he really wanted to be executed, but Crest just kept quiet and asked to leave immediately. Ellis felt humiliated by her rejection and left Crest a warning that he would regret not accepting her help. That same day, she fell ill and had to return home. When he woke up, Ellis quickly prepared to meet Crest. However, the servant reported that Crest had been banished to the lower world before dawn. Ellis was horrified because he did not expect this to happen to him. Meanwhile, in the lower world, Crest was constantly hunting black wolves to accumulate points for the gacha skill. Each gacha spin required defeating 5 wolves, and Crest originally planned to spin as soon as he reached 500 points. But after thinking about it, he was determined to collect 5,000 points to have a chance to spin a higher level skill. He hoped to receive a skill that would make his body lighter and stronger. Setting a bigger goal for himself, Crest enthusiastically continued hunting until he had defeated 37 wolves. He believed that at this rate, reaching 5,000 points would be easy. However, when he checked his score, he discovered something horrifying. His score stopped at 250, meaning that all the wolves he killed after that were in vain. Crest panicked, but quickly calmed down to think. After a while, he realized that the points were limited by area. He had hunted too many monsters in the same area, causing the points to stop increasing. Realizing his mistake, Crest moved to another area and killed another wolf, immediately gaining new points. Finally, before the sun set, he reached 5,000 points. Crest understood that each area had a certain limit of points, and he needed to move to continue accumulating. He started hunting other monsters, like Goblia and Fang rabbits. Goblias were easy to deal with because of their poor brain development, but Fang rabbits caused a lot of trouble because they were very agile. After the long battles, Crest realized that just one skill would not be enough to survive here. Now, with 5,000 points in hand, he was ready to spin the gacha and search for new skills to increase his chances of survival in the dangerous lower world. Crest couldn't be happier and couldn't wait to try it out. He carefully checked the gacha before spinning and discovered that there were 3 advanced skills: healer, appraisal, and cultivation, skills that were normally only given to one person. The idea of being able to possess all 3 made Crest extremely excited. He was wondering whether he should find a safe place before spinning, but when he saw that there was an extra spin reward for spinning 10 times, a total of 11 times, Crest couldn't wait any longer and immediately chose to spin. As he pressed the spin button, a chest fell from the sky in front of him. Crest looked at the treasure chest and pressed the open button. Immediately, orbs resembling Dragon Balls flew out, with colors ranging from bronze, silver, to rainbow, each color representing different levels. He wondered if each orb represented a different skill. Crest decided to check the bronze orb first. As the orb glowed, it transformed into skills such as agility, strength, and basic magic abilities. Then he opened the silver orbs, which promised combat skills such as swordsmanship, daggers, and ore mining. Finally, the gold orbs gave him earth and fire magic skills, which were extremely useful for his survival in the mortal world. While Crest was busy exploring his new skills, Ellis at home felt restless and uncomfortable. Despite being praised by others, she was not really happy. Ellis considers herself more beautiful than an angel, but memories of her childhood flood back, reminding her of the first time she met Crest. When she was young, Ellis sought out Crest, but he warned her to stay away from him because he was called a devil's child. Ellis knew better than to get involved with Crest. But after that meeting, she felt different about him. Crest did not treat her like other people, which attracted Ellis. She decided to do everything she could to make him interested in her, and from then on, she often met Crest to make him her submissive, even forcing him to be her horse. Gradually, Ellis revealed her cruel side, but only in front of Crest. To everyone around her, she still maintained an elegant and beautiful image. Even Crest's brothers treated Ellis well. However, whenever they mocked Crest as useless in front of her, Ellis felt disgusted. Ellis could not bear to see Crest being looked down upon, and when her anger exceeded her limits, she went to her father, Duke Rifled, to ask for permission. Her father agreed and gathered everyone to hear Ellis's important announcement. To everyone's surprise, Ellis announced that she wanted to be engaged to Crest of the Barhurst family. This declaration shocked everyone, but in the end, everything went as she wished. Crest and Ellis then began attending the Royal Academy together, where Crest emerged as a promising swordsman. Ellis was extremely proud of him during this time. As Crest stood out, he attracted the attention of many girls in the academy. However, no one dared to approach him because Ellis had publicly announced that she and Crest were engaged, causing everyone to be wary and keep their distance from him. Ellis began to get jealous when she saw other girls still trying to approach Crest. Every time Crest received gifts from them, Ellis felt uncomfortable. Even though the girls saw Crest as a Romeo with Juliet, they still wanted to have him for themselves. Ellis confronted Crest and reminded him that she was his fiancée. Crest reassured her that it would not change, but Ellis's jealousy grew. Over time, Ellis's behavior towards Crest became more rude. Her jealousy attracted attention in the academy, causing Crest to lose confidence and fall into depression. Ellis, despite Crest's displeasure, still wants to keep him all to herself, and even finds pleasure in seeing him suffer. When she learns about Crest's dream of obtaining the rare skill called gacha, Ellis's family and servants consider Crest the perfect fiancé for her. However, Ellis begins to fear that if Crest truly succeeds, he will leave her. This paranoid thought makes her sad. When Crest is accused of lying about his skill, Ellis feels pleased. She believes that this is her chance to give Crest a little hope, making him depend on her forever. However, things do not go as she expected. When Crest pushes her away, Ellis realizes her mistake and regrets not being honest with him. The thought of possibly never seeing Crest again makes Ellis burst into tears. At that moment, a servant knocked on the door and asked to see Ellis. Her eyes were red. She told them not to come in and asked what was the matter. The servant informed her that her father, Duke Ratkind, had sent for her to come to him immediately. Ellis wondered what was going on. Meanwhile, in the lower world, Crest found some peaches that were bigger and tastier than the ones on the ground. The sweet and juicy taste of the peaches helped him recover his stamina. Crest noticed that in this place not only monsters but also trees grew surprisingly large and fast. Before that, Crest had hunted a few more fish monsters and accumulated enough points. He decided to roll 11 gachas again and received many great skills. This time, Crest possessed skills from bronze to rainbow, with 2 rainbow skills, the rarest type. Among them, he received appraisal twice and cultivation. He has many other skills to explore, including skills that he has received more than once, opening up more opportunities to survive and thrive in the underground world. With the cultivation skill, Crest experimented by planting a peach seed, and in just 5 days, he grew a whole peach tree. This is no different from cheating compared to the real world. For the past 5 days, Crest has been exploring the new land and practicing his skills. Now, it's time to spin the gacha again to find more new skills. Crest pressed the spin button 11 times and received many new skills, including unarmed combat, cooking, wind magic, and finally the rarest rainbow skill, healer. He was extremely excited because he had long wanted to own this healing skill. The best thing was that Crest could use this skill to create recovery potions. But first, he needed to find and collect herbs. In the afternoon, after searching for herbs, Crest continued to hunt monsters. While facing a fang cow, his sword suddenly broke into pieces, leaving him completely defenseless against its next attack. He was close to defeating the monster, but now the situation was extremely dangerous. With no other choice, Crest decided to use his magic skill, even though it was only at level 1. This was his last gamble, but then a thought flashed through his mind. He had another option. As Fang Kao charged, Crest took a deep breath, prepared himself, and activated his unarmed combat skill. Crest put all his strength into his punch and slammed his fist into the Fang Cao's head, pushing it back. The monster fell and died instantly from the sheer force of the punch. This was one of the stronger monsters Crest had ever faced, so he received 200 points, far exceeding the usual 100 points. Crest realized that the points were not fixed, and he felt that this was very useful for accumulating faster. However, soon after, Crest's right arm became numb. The recoil from the punch caused the skin and bones of his arm to crack. Crest was in excruciating pain as he looked at his arm, torn, broken, and covered in lacerations. Having no other choice, he quickly activated his healer skill to heal himself. Crest then used the herbs he had collected and combined them with magical water to create a healing potion. He quickly applied the potion to his hand, but as usual, the potion hurt more than the wound. Crest's painful scream echoed throughout the area. Fortunately, after a while, the pain subsided, and his hand was almost completely healed. Although he was impressed with the effectiveness of the rainbow skill, Crest realized that he had no weapons left. He decided to quickly forge a new sword using the blacksmith skill he had learned earlier. A crafting table appeared before him, where Crest placed the 2 horns of the Fang Cow and the broken sword hilt. Before long, he had forged a new sword with great flexibility. Crest was very satisfied with this skill. However, from the recent battle, he understood that relying on weapons alone would not be enough to survive. Crest began to wonder if it would be possible to find allies in the lower world. He knew that stronger monsters would appear, and that being alone would be extremely dangerous. If you have a companion, you will be able to take turns guarding and resting, making you safer on this dangerous journey. Crest began to think about the possibility of finding allies to strategize for the upcoming battles. He remembered being thrown into the lower world and wondered if there were others who had also been banished here. However, another question arose in his mind. Could he make friends with other sinners or with monsters like goblins? If he had to choose, Crest would look for traces of humans first. Suddenly, Crest remembered that he didn't know how to make friends because he had never had the chance to do so before. The only friend he remembered was a classmate from the academy, a girl who had been impressed by his swordsmanship. The two had fun sparring matches together, and he had kept this a secret from Ellis. Thinking about her, Crest wondered what she was doing now. Meanwhile, at the royal castle, Ellis went to see her father as requested. There, she unexpectedly met Minue Mycelian, a former classmate from the Mycelian family, one of the 3 great dukes of the Rakind kingdom. Ellis and Minue did not get along, and the reason was obvious. Minue was summoned by the king, and although Ellis did not like facing her, she had no choice but to accept the situation. Minue not only came from a prestigious family, but also possessed a rare skill from the appraisal ceremony, and was in the same class as Crest. Ellis had discovered that Minue spent more time with Crest than she did, which had long made Ellis jealous of Minue. Not long after, Crest's brothers, idiots whose combined intelligence was less than 10, also entered the courtroom. They immediately began to flatter Ellis and Minue. However, both girls understood that these people were only bad-mouthing Crest, which made them both angry. Ellis and Minue remained silent, until Ellis finally broke the silence. Ellis made it clear to Crest's two brothers that none of them could replace him and told them to stop bragging about how much better they were than Crest. Minue also did not hesitate to speak up, warning that if they bothered her again, she would not hesitate to shut them up herself, right there. Faced with this situation, the two Bahurst brothers were confused and retreated, making way for them to enter the royal palace where King Rezifal was waiting. King Rezifal wasted no time in greetings and quickly apologized for summoning them so urgently. Duke Abaral of the Bahurst family quickly spoke up, trying to please the king by promising that the Bahurst family would always be ready to assist whenever needed. King Rezifal announced that the meeting was called to discuss the increase in monsters in the territory. Although the Mycelian family had dealt with the recent attack, the situation was still serious. The king said that his pope had received a prophecy and had recorded it in a letter. At that moment, the knight captain approached with the letter in hand and began to read it aloud to the court. The letter revealed that the recent monster attacks were just a sign of a major raid that was about to happen. This news terrified many in the court as it posed a serious threat to the country's security. However, the next part of the letter offered a glimmer of hope. God had prepared a countermeasure, which was special skills that had been bestowed upon a few people recently. The letter confirmed that 3 people had been chosen to receive this skill, and the first was Ellis, with the Saint's Blessing skill. Ellis didn't expect her skills to be so important, making her feel proud and full of pride. Her father was also extremely proud of his daughter. Ellis felt that her skills seemed too strong for the needs of this world, and that made her even more proud. Next, the knight captain announced the name of the second person, Minue Mycelian, with the hero's strike skill. Hearing this, Ellis couldn't help but feel annoyed, because Minue's skills were of the powerful attack type, while her skills were only of a support type, forcing her to rely on others in combat situations. The fact that Minue possessed a second special skill meant that Ellis might have to meet her more often in the future. Ellis even thought that if Minue was killed on the battlefield, she would happily let her die without any intention of saving her. When the knight captain announced the name of the last person with the special skill, the Bahurst brothers tensed up, hoping that their name would be called. However, everyone was stunned when the name was announced as Gacha. This shocked the Bahurst brothers, and the most panicked person was Abaral, the head of the Bahurst family. King Rezifal commented that the Gacha skill had been mentioned a lot recently, suggesting that it could be the key to solving the problems caused by monsters in the future. He was pleased that these special powers were in the hands of the dukes loyal to him. Rezifal also announced that there would be more people possessing anti-monster skills, so no one needed to fear the threat from them. However, Ellis and the others knew the situation was much more troublesome, as Crest was not present. Ellis realized that it seemed that the king did not know about Crest's exile to the lower world, as he still appeared calm and cheerful. Meanwhile, Abaral could not raise his head, his body trembling with fear. Ellis felt angry that Abaral had made a serious mistake. This could mean that only she and Minue will have to face the monsters on the battlefield. King Rezifal then asked Abaral about Crest's condition, since he wasn't present. He also asked if Crest really had the Gacha skill. Abaral tried to dodge the question, saying that Crest was unwell. Ellis's father, Duke Ryfeld, stepped forward and asked the king for permission to explain the situation. He bluntly stated that Crest would never be able to set foot here again. King Rezifal asked again, confused, asking Ryfeld to explain further. Ryfeld replied that Abaral was the best person to explain this, while Abaral continued to tremble. Abaral tried to beat around the bush, saying that Crest had committed a grave sin, so he had to banish him to the mortal world. The king was shocked to learn that one of the 3 greatest hopes of the country was no longer here. Rezifal asked Abaral to describe what had happened, and Abaral said that he had indeed committed a serious crime. Abaral asked Rezifal what serious crime a 15-year-old could commit that would warrant being sent to the underworld, and he had no answer to give the king. Minue then stepped forward and told King Rezifal that Crest had not committed any crime, but he was still sent to the underworld. Since Crest was unable to use his skills at the ceremony, Abaral accused him of being a liar. King Rezifal was very upset when he heard about Abaral's foolish actions. Although Abaral tried to justify that Minue was just talking nonsense, Duke Ryfeld spoke up to confirm that everyone in the court was present at Crest's ceremony, and according to the contents of the prophecy letter, Crest had clearly been telling the truth all along. Unfortunately, Abaral did not believe his own son, leading to the current chaotic situation. Abaral realized that he was in big trouble and had no way out. Ellis felt satisfied that a part of her revenge had been carried out. Then her father, Ryfeld, stepped forward and suggested to King Rezafel that instead of worrying, they should organize a search party to bring Crest back from the underworld. Ryfeld also asked for permission to make another suggestion. When Crest was brought back, he should be appointed as the head of the Bahurst family. Aberol was horrified to see that even his position was being threatened. He tried to justify that Crest had no right to be the head of the family. However, Ryfeld coldly told him to be quiet, reminding him that he was talking to King Rezafel. King Rezafel asked Ryfeld to explain further, and Ryfeld replied that Crest was treated as a criminal, even though he was innocent. If Crest was not properly compensated, he would most likely hold a grudge against the entire country. Therefore, Ryfeld suggested that the Bahurst family take responsibility and compensate Crest for the unfair treatment. King Rezafel agreed to this proposal and stated that if the condition for Crest's return was to become the head of the Bahurst family, he would accept it. Aberol fell into a state of panic, fearing that his future was in danger. Ellis, in that moment, realized that this was actually her father's plan. Ryfeld wanted to take advantage of the relationship between Ellis and Crest to unite the power of the two dukes, enough to surpass King Rezafel and claim the throne, although all of this could have happened if Ellis had a good relationship with the Crest. However, Ellis did not care about her father's plot. She just wanted to see Crest again and apologize to him for everything that happened. Meanwhile, in the lower world, Crest received a new skill called Bestow Magic, which allows him to transfer his skills to weapons. He also received a map-making skill, which is very useful for exploration. Crest immediately decided to try Bestowal Magic. He pulled out a sword made from Fang Cao's horn, which already had two skills, slashing and strengthening. Crest was surprised to learn that he could choose either of these two skills to infuse into his weapon. He decided to choose the slashing skill and infused it into his sword. Crest smelled a refreshing scent and decided to follow it, which led him to the shore. The seascape, covered in thick fog, created a mystical beauty in the lower world, making him change his mind about this place. Crest remembered that there had been attempts to cross this sea, but all of them turned out to be unsolved mysteries. As he got closer, Crest discovered an abandoned harbour, and he went to check it out of curiosity. There were no boats there, and he wondered what had happened. The lower world contained many undiscovered mysteries, but for now, Crest decided to try his fishing skill in the hope of finding delicious meat or seafood. Within seconds, his line was taut. Something large was caught. When he pulled it up, he was horrified to see that it was a Krakegun, a giant sea monster. Crest screamed in surprise. Krakegun attacked with his water spear, but luckily, Crest dodged it and summoned his sword. Crest analyzes the way Krakegun uses weapons and realizes its intelligence in trying to block the escape route. However, he stays calm, using the Bestowal Magic skill to activate a powerful slashing technique on the sword. The sharp blade cuts through Krakegun's scales, destroying it and earning Crest 200 points. Crest wonders if he can take down monsters like this in one hit next time. However, at that moment, more Krakegans appear, forcing him to quickly prepare for battle. Although initially hoping to get delicious seafood, Crest is disappointed to find that Krakegun is edible, but looks too disgusting to be a meal. Instead, he continues fishing, earning more points and searching for other seafood. Meanwhile, in the Rezafel Kingdom, the Bahurst family currently has no representative seat. The leaders of two other clans asked the king to allow them to join the search for the Crest. Marcus, the head of the Mycelian clan, offers to send Minue, their most powerful one, on this mission. However, King Rezafel worries that if Minue leaves, the country will be left without a protector, as she has been shouldering most of the recent battles against monsters. Marcus argues that the Crest being trapped in the lower world is even more dangerous, and time is of the essence. He suggests that finding the Crest should be prioritized over anything else. The king finds this proposal reasonable and asks Minue if she is willing. Minue, with a gentle voice and a lovely demeanor, replies that the king can entrust her with this mission. Rezafel, fascinated by her cuteness, decides to allow Minue to carry out the mission and dismisses everyone. At that moment, Ellis joins the conversation, offering to join the search for the Crest, on the grounds that she is his fiancé. She tactfully reminded the king of their engagement, knowing that she was now only Crest's ex-fiancé. However, Minue quickly interjects, stating that this is not a good idea. She says that Crest once shared with her about Ellis's mental torture for a long time, causing him to not want to see Ellis again. Ellis feels like a bomb has just exploded in her mind after Minue's words. She tries to stop Minue from saying more, but Minue continues to explain to King Rezafel that Crest might run away if he sees Ellis, and that would make it even harder to bring him back. Minue even warns that Crest might consider ending his life if forced. Ellis is silent after that statement. King Resifal turns to ask her if what Minue said is true. Ellis admits that she has been quite harsh with Crest, but justifies that it was necessary because Minue is eyeing her fiancé. King Resifal seemed to understand Ellis's motives somewhat. However, Minue immediately denied it, saying that she only saw Crest as a friend and thought that Ellis was lying. The two continued to argue for a while, leaving King Resifal unable to intervene, until he had to shout for both of them to stop. He said that it didn't matter who was going, he just wanted Crest to be saved and returned. Minue then asked Ellis what his plan was to bring Crest back. Ellis replied that she would convince him with the gift her father had prepared, the title of head of the Barhurst family. Minue sarcastically asked if the title would really be enough to convince Crest to return. Ellis was confident that the plan would work, but Minue disagreed. Minue told Ellis that she didn't really understand Crest if she thought a title could make him happy. She asserted that what Crest wanted most was freedom, and that even if he became a duke, he would never be happy. Before leaving, Minue left a bitter remark. Only Ellis could come up with such a meaningless plan. Ellis stood there, confused, and wondering what freedom Minue really meant. Meanwhile, in the lower world, Crest was contemplating the last day of April. He remembered that his gacha spins were all labelled as April versions, and he diligently did gacha spins continuously before April ended. In the end, Crest maxed out all his rainbow skills through these spins, just like opening item boxes in a game. He felt extremely happy that he had reached the skill limit. Afterwards, Crest returned to a cave where he had taken refuge. With his new skill called construction techniques, he decided to build himself a house. Crest had carefully planned out what kind of house he wanted. He started gathering materials and searched for a place with a nice view, near a stream so he could fish whenever he wanted, and easy access to unexplored areas. After he found a place he wanted to build with the techniques he set out to do, there wasn't a wide variety of house types and sizes available. He was very happy that he could design his own house, and build the house immediately. He was surprised at how fast the house was completed with really strong walls, and the house could protect him from the dangers of monsters. Crest entered the new house and was extremely satisfied with the details inside. Curtains, window frames, and especially the high-quality kitchen. He thought that cooking would become much more fun with a fully equipped kitchen and the cooking skills he possessed. Crest was excited to be able to cook any dish he wanted and experiment with all kinds of dishes without any limits. This quickly became his passion. As he lay down on the bed made from Fang sheep's fur, Crest couldn't believe how soft it was. Before falling asleep, he looked at the calendar in his room, reminding him to spin the gacha. Crest opens the gacha screen and reflects on his journey from the beginning until now. He double-checked to see if he had received all the skills from the April batch, fearing that when April ended, those skills would disappear. Currently, Crest had strength, stamina, endurance, speed, and magic power, all exceeding 100. After doing about 40,000 gacha spins, he had collected 30 different skills, including many rare magics that could greatly improve his life. This feeling made him realize that his life had completely changed, and he couldn't imagine living without these skills. As he lay in bed thinking, Crest recalled hearing about a skill that allowed the user to befriend and raise monsters under him. He wondered if May would bring a new batch of gacha skills, but at the same time he felt that it might be too convenient. Crest wasn't sure if he could get any new skills, or worse, all the accumulated points this month might disappear when the new month started. He fell into a deep sleep after a long time, feeling relaxed on the soft bed. Meanwhile, at the Bayhurst family home, the brothers were discussing how they had been humiliated by Crest not only during the trial, but also in front of King Resifal. One of them angrily asked if they really thought Crest would become the head of the family. They replied that it did not scare them, even if Crest took over, because they had never directly bullied him. But the truth was that they had all bullied Crest before. The discussion became tense until Aberrel slammed his fist on the table and shouted that what they needed to do now was to decide who would go find Crest first. He asked his sons who volunteered to go. At that moment, Albert spoke up, volunteering to go down to the mortal world to find Crest. He claims that he has a secret plan to bring back the Crest, but in the most convenient way for the family. Albert pulls out a suspicious item, a slave collar, making his intentions more obvious. The slave collar that Albert carries has the ability to turn the wearer into a complete slave under the control of the owner. This is a tool used for crime, which worries Duke and makes him ask Albert if he is sure he wants to use it, because if this is revealed to King Resifal, they will be in big trouble. Albert threatens Duke that if he says such things again, he will be burned alive. Albert and his group then head to the entrance to the underworld. The underworld is actually just a separate land from the normal world, separated by a ceiling wall with a gate connecting it to the upper world. This is the only way for normal people to enter the underworld other than the teleportation circle. Before going to the underworld, Albert's knights remind him to be careful. However, Albert is confident that he can deal with any monster, from goblins to wolves, and he believes that with a large force, finding Crest will not be too difficult. Albert also has his own plans. He wants to surpass the other brothers who do not recognize this opportunity. He plans to use Crest as a puppet with the help of a slave collar and then control the entire Barhurst family for himself. With this plan, Albert enters the underworld. Elsewhere, Crest is having a little dream about becoming a veteran in the lower world. When he wakes up in the morning, the first thing he does is check the gacha skills of May. As expected, there was a whole new set of skills. Crest still had 10,000 points from April and was ready to use the gacha skill. With 10,000 points, he could spin the gacha twice, which meant he was guaranteed to get at least one rainbow skill. When Crest pressed the spin button, he received a bunch of new skills. Among them, he discovered a silver skill called Monster Evolution and a rainbow skill called Summoner. The Monster Evolution skill allowed him to upgrade the monsters he owned, while the Summoner skill allowed him to summon the monsters he had befriended from any location. However, Crest realized that these two skills would be useless if he didn't have the Monster Taming skill. Not letting himself down, he continued to spin the gacha again. This time, he received two new skills, Monster Taming and Monster Training. Crest was extremely excited because he could now tame and train monsters as he wished. Crest decided to try out his new skill immediately and went to find a goblin to tame. Thanks to his knowledge from the academy, he knew that in order to successfully tame, must defeat the monster without hurting it too much, and must show sincere emotions. However, the past of being beaten by his brothers constantly makes him anxious and haunted, affecting the taming process. In a moment of losing control, Crest accidentally hits the goblin too hard. The punch makes him worry if he has hurt the goblin too badly, putting the taming plan at risk of failure. When Crest goes to check on the goblin, his monster taming skill automatically activates and successfully tames it. He discovers that it is a female goblin, which makes Crest relieved that he finally has a companion after a long time of loneliness. Crest, mentally exhausted from enduring loneliness for so long, decides to extend his hand to the goblin to shake hands as a sign of friendship. However, the goblin slaps his hand away. Not out of disrespect, but simply because it does not know how to shake hands. Crest patiently taught the goblin, whom he called Gobu, how to shake hands, but it seemed too difficult for the goblin. Using the appraisal skill, Crest checked Gobu's stats and found that she only had 1 intelligence point, indicating that she was actually quite stupid. Crest suddenly recalled how his brothers had once engraved the word useless into his soul, making his heart ache for a moment. Looking at Gobu, he realized that she was just like him, once considered useless. Feeling sympathetic, Crest reached out and gently patted Gobu, letting her know that no matter how hard it was, he would always be there to help her become better. Crest understood that Gobu was not truly useless, but just needed to be taught with kindness and patience. He was determined to turn her into a strong and kind goblin. Crest then decided to try out his other skills, starting with the Summoner skill. When he activated it, the skill worked brilliantly, making Gobu panic a little at first. This made Crest burst out laughing at her silliness. Realizing that this fast summoning speed would be useful for future surprise attacks, Crest became even more pleased. Gobu also began to enjoy this skill. While he was engrossed in his training, Crest suddenly heard a strange sound from behind him, making him wonder if he had heard wrongly. However, he ignored it and continued with his work. In fact, the sound came from the battle between the knights and the goblins not far away. It was Albert's army, currently struggling in the battle with the goblins. Albert, increasingly frustrated with having to face the goblins he despised, could not bear to see his team suffer because of inferior creatures. With his knights almost wiped out, Albert angrily asked the scouting team if they were doing their job properly. The team reported that the thick magical fog had disrupted their scouting ability. Albert didn't think that the monsters would be a big obstacle for his team, and after going through all the problems, he realized that his team was not capable enough to be able to fight like before. When asking for a report on the number of injured, they said about 5 to 6 people were seriously injured, and most of the rest were also lightly injured, in addition to the fatigue from the battles. One of them suggested retreating and preparing for the next attack. However, Albert refused and declared that he would continue to advance, leaving those who could not move behind. He insisted that if those people survived until they returned, they would be picked up. Albert refused to accept defeat by the goblins. He was worried that if he failed, his position would be threatened. This cold and fierce attitude caused some of the knights to decide to abandon him and return to the upper world. Immediately, Albert killed one of the knights with a spear, to strike fear into the remaining knights, asserting his absolute leadership. He threatened to kill anyone who opposed him. As the situation became tense, one of the knights discovered human footprints on the ground. Albert examined them and found that the tracks were very fresh, indicating that Crest could be very close. Albert orders the team to speed up and follow the footprints. Meanwhile, Crest has befriended a wolf. With an intelligence of 20, Gobu excitedly asks Crest to check his stats. As Crest watches, a notification window pops up, asking if he wants to give Gobu an official name. It is only then that he realizes that Gobu is just a temporary name from what she can say. Crest decides to name her Goblia. As soon as he was named, Goblia began to glow brightly, and evolved into a more humanoid form. Crest wondered if this was the effect of the monster evolution skill he had received. In any case, Goblia's stats had increased significantly after evolving. Then, the wolf also gestured to Crest as if wanting a name. Crest was curious if the wolf would evolve like Goblia, as that would look quite strange. However, he still tried and named it Rufna. After being named, Rufna only grew a little in size and didn't change much, which made Crest feel relieved. Crest was glad that he now had two companions. He decided that from today on, he would treat Rufna and Goblia as his beloved relatives, as his own family. Suddenly, Crest felt a malevolent aura from behind. Rufna and Goblia immediately became alert, clearly sensing the danger from this presence. Both sharpened their fangs, ready to fight. Crest was surprised by their reaction and quickly looked in the direction they were facing to see what was happening. Crest faced his fear from the past, when he realized that the scream he heard earlier was definitely a human voice. And the cause of it all could only be that bastard, his brother, Albert. Albert finally smiled wickedly after finding Crest. Crest recalled that he had tried to raise a pet before, but it was killed by Albert. Albert always despised Crest, calling him a devil child, and parricide, saying that Crest never deserved what he wanted in life. Albert deeply hated Crest, claiming that he would never forgive him. But the truth was that Albert was a cruel person from the beginning, who loved to torture others. Whenever he faced Albert, like now, Crest was filled with fear and tension. He wondered why Albert appeared here, in the lower world, a place not meant for humans. Albert, with a fake attitude, welcomed Crest as if they were close friends. He says he's been looking for him all this time, and despite thinking Crest was dead, he's relieved to see him alive. But Crest knows something's wrong. Albert continues in a deceitful tone, saying that this should be a touching reunion between the two brothers, since he came here to bring Crest back. Crest doesn't believe a word of it. When Albert says that banishing him to the mortal world was just a joke, Crest coldly replies that it wasn't a joke since it almost killed him on the first day. Albert, ignoring him, says that it doesn't matter since he's still alive. But Crest knows. He sees through the fear in his heart, the fear that he and his brothers implanted in Crest's mind since he was born, to make sure he would never dare to rebel against them. Albert doesn't care that Crest possesses a rare skill. What he really wants is to use it for his own benefit. He ordered the knights not to show fear in front of the monsters, because if anyone dared to show weakness, he would kill them immediately. Their fear of Albert was even greater than their fear of monsters. Albert approached Crest again, and he began to growl. Albert coldly asked Crest if he would lose another friend like before. Crest tries to explain that he did not kill the pet, but Albert insists that it was Crest's weakness, his inability to protect it, that caused its death. Crest feels fear rising in his heart. Albert orders Crest to return to the upper world with him, but Crest, in a rare moment of courage, insists that he will not return. His words anger Albert. Albert shouted in a heavy voice to put him around, and hearing that Crest's fear reached its peak, from his point of view, Albert was the scariest thing, ordering Crest to respect him as his brother. With his soldier language, he started to trigger Crest's fear instinct, making his heart rate increase continuously to the point that Crest started to tremble from head to toe. Albert shouted to order Crest to stop growling at him, or else he would kill the wolf on the spot because of the noise. Albert's threat made Crest panic. He started to apologize continuously in extreme fear. Albert laughed gleefully, seeing his plan, taking advantage of Crest's past fear, had succeeded perfectly. Crest completely collapsed and couldn't think clearly. Rufna, however, stood guard over him, continuing to growl at the knights, making them fearful, but not daring to run away for fear of being executed by Albert. When Crest tried to ask Rufner and Goblia to stop to avoid provoking Albert further, his deep fear had almost made him lose all will to resist. Albert enjoyed every moment of Crest's despair. He threatened that if Crest did not obey, he would continue to torture him as before. In desperation, Albert loudly ordered Crest to obey him, saying that he was still defective and not worthy of living. He threatened that if Crest dared to show disrespect, he would not hesitate to beat him again. Crest could only cry, repeating his apologies in extreme fear. Albert realized that, without the need for a slave collar, he had completely controlled Crest with the invisible fear that had been ingrained in his mind all along. Believing in his dominance, Albert ordered the knights to move forward and capture Crest. They tied Crest up like a slave and began to take him back. Goblia couldn't bear this sight. But when she tried to get closer, a knight beat her up and called her a filthy monster. Goblia was furious at being treated like that. But she couldn't do anything because Crest had completely fallen into their hands and had no will to fight anymore, only crying. Crest understood that, although he had wanted to help Goblia become stronger, he now couldn't do anything because he felt so useless. Even though Goblia kept trying to approach and call out to him, Crest still couldn't escape the psychological trauma. But when he looked at Goblia's hopeful eyes, he began to waver, rethinking about giving up everything. Then Goblia suddenly ran into the forest, disappearing from Crest's sight. He told himself that this was probably the final proof of her loyalty, and it might be the last time he saw his friend. Guilt flooded Crest's heart. He hated himself for losing everything, despite coming to the mortal world with a special skill. At that moment, Rufner stepped forward, biting lightly on Crest's shirt, trying to prevent him from collapsing completely. The knights were momentarily panicked by the wolf, while Crest asked Rufner to let go. Albert, who had lost patience with everything that was happening, stepped forward with an angry look in his eyes. When Crest tried to tell Rufner to go somewhere else to avoid angering Albert, Albert was right behind him, his eyes blazing with hatred. He ordered Crest to chase the wolf away, or he would be responsible for its death. Albert's threatening voice made Crest lose all his courage and confidence, the very voice that had kept him in the grip of helplessness all this time. Despite Crest's strong potential, his fear rendered him useless. Once again, Crest could only cry in pain, his heart breaking under the weight of despair. Crest heard the sounds of many goblins echoing around them, making the knights fear that it might be the goblins who had escaped earlier returning to their comrades. Suddenly, a punch rang out through the forest. Albert punched Crest in the face, thinking that he had sent Goblia to call for more goblins. Albert ordered Crest to stop everything immediately. However, this time, Crest felt nothing after the punch. He knew Albert was going to hit him, and when the punch actually landed, Crest realized that Albert's threatening voice was no longer echoing in his mind. Instead, a strange feeling rose in his heart. Serenity. Crest realized that Rufner was still standing close to him, protecting him like a loyal friend. The only sound he could hear now was Goblia's voice, the same sound she made every time he summoned her. Crest began to understand that Goblia was trying to convey something to him. Goblia made this familiar sound every time she was excited about being summoned. And just a few minutes ago, as she ran around Crest, he realized that she was trying to convey something. Suddenly, Crest remembered what he had said about using the speed of summoning as an effective tactic. It was amazing that Goblia still remembered that. Crest knew exactly what he needed to do. He called out Goblia's name loudly, signaling that he understood the message she wanted to convey, and was ready for the next move. With all the courage he had left, Crest tried to shake off his obsession and activated his summoning skill. Crest activated his summoning skill right in front of Albert, calling Goblia to appear next to him. Without hesitation, Goblia rushed forward and threw a punch straight at Albert's hateful face. The punch was so powerful that it sent him flying towards a tree a few meters away. Albert lay there, stunned, not understanding what had just happened. Goblia seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, surprising him to the point of not being able to react. Goblia happily ran towards Crest with a bright smile. Crest was also extremely happy to see her so smart and quick-witted at this crucial moment. He gently patted her head, praising her for doing a great job. At that moment, Albert, with a swollen face, started to speak in anger because Goblia hit him straight in the face. Albert continued to call Crest useless, nothing to him. But this time, Crest could not bear it any longer. He stood up, turned the handcuffs on his hands into a sword, and walked towards Albert. Crest looked straight at him, declaring that Albert was never his brother and wondered why a coward like him appeared here. Albert began to panic when he saw Crest easily turn the handcuffs into a sword and brought the blade just an inch from his eyes. Crest no longer hesitated, affirming that Albert was his enemy. Albert was cornered, facing a Crest who was now completely confident in his strength. Albert tried to hold Crest's blade with his bare hands and used his skills to melt it, making room to stand. He reminded Crest that he knew the consequences of defying him, then turned to order the knights to kill Goblia and Ruffner, instead of standing there as if watching a play. Although hesitant, the knights obeyed. They charged towards Goblia and Ruffner, but at that moment, the number of knights quickly dwindled as they confronted them. Albert was now the only one left, his eyes filled with fear of impending death. Crest asked Albert if he really thought attacking his friends would make him flinch. Crest made it clear that Albert had no chance against their power. However, Albert called Crest a fool and began to gather fire in his hands. He claims that his fire skill has reached level 5, one of the highest in the upper realm. Albert fires a powerful fireball at Crest, but he is not phased. Crest simply uses earth magic to create a wall, blocking the attack. Albert is surprised to see that Crest has another skill, and begins to wonder how many other skills he has. Albert tries to calm down, but even though he keeps firing more fireballs, Crest's earth wall still stands firm. Albert feels hopeless, because he cannot break it. He asks Crest if his earth skill is level 5 or higher, since there is no way a low-level skill can withstand his level 5 fire magic. Crest replies that his earth magic is only level 3. This makes both of them realize that Crest's gacha skill is far beyond ordinary skills. Crest questions Albert's call of his skill divine skill, and Albert realizes he has misspoken, but even so, he has nothing more to hide. Albert reveals that Crest's gacha skill is one of the special skills given by the gods to protect the heavenly realm from monster invasions. The constant attacks from monsters are increasing, indicating that a major invasion is threatening their territory. Albert knelt down and begged Crest to come back and save the heavenly realm. Hearing this, Crest lowered the earthen wall and stepped forward, while Albert felt the most humiliated in his life as he knelt before Crest. But Albert told himself to just pretend until he had the chance to attach the slave collar to Crest's neck. Then, Crest asked Albert to raise his head and stabbed him in the left shoulder with his sword. Crest did not want to show mercy to Albert because Albert and the others had abandoned him like that, and now they wanted him to come back. That was crazy. That was the height of selfishness from Albert and the others. Now, Crest no longer cared about what would happen to the heavenly realm. As he turned the sword around on Albert's shoulder, he screamed in pain, because this stab could kill him. Crest asked Albert if he really thought he could convince him with that pathetic expression. Albert replied that their father, Aberal Bahurst, had wanted to make amends and was willing to give Crest the title of Duke, along with all the power and wealth of the Bahurst family. Albert tried to offer these things in exchange for forgiveness, but Crest flatly refused. He was not interested in any of them. Crest continued to stab Albert repeatedly, as if to vent all the hatred he had accumulated for so long. But deep down, a part of Crest felt that this was wrong. However, his mind just wanted to release all the anger that had been suppressed for so long. All the pain that Crest had endured seemed to be turning him into a cruel person, stirring up the dark side hidden deep within his soul.